Welcome to Microfocus Data Discovery. In previous sessions, we've used the connect tile to go and allow the system to ingest and information from various unstructured data sources. We've put on some options to look for sensitive data patterns inside that data. We've used the analyze section to look at this at a high level view, so broadly across all of the data to help us make some decisions and set some priorities. The file section will look through manage. The manage tile allows us to create and execute policies using workbooks. So we were going to create these things called workspaces. We could have created these workspaces directly from the analyze section, or we can create them ourselves with inside manage. And then it allows us to take action, so we could allow us to execute some data preservation, to export, do some further enrichment, or actually execute some form of deletion to remove that sensitive data. Okay, so let's look at the manage section. Okay, so if I click on manage, it takes me to a list of workspaces. I've got two example workspaces based on a particular type. I've got a subject access request and a risk assessment. The number of these workspace templates are defined in the configuration section on the left hand side here. Out of the box, you get a number of different types. And you can, but the organization, you can create as many of these templates as you wish. If we look at the data subject access request template, the option, we have a name and a description and the ability to enforce a policy review. So when actions are taken to perhaps delete data, do you want to enforce some kind of review where somebody else checks whether the data will be reviewed? So this is like a checkpoint, it's like a small workflow process. So someone assigns documents to be deleted, somebody then approves those are deleted before they're actually executed. So that's what this checkbox does here. And we have a default securities. So we have a number of roles on a workspace. We've got document reviewer who can see the documents, full control, who can manage the actual workspaces, so to change the options such as the ones you see here, who can review policies, the policies that we just discussed, and who can just do search. So you can set this up as a template of the different roles that can be applied. Then we define categories. So the categories are used to groups of workbook items to allow us to show this information on the dashboard about the processes that we're going to enact to manage this data, to de-risk it, to mitigate the risk of sensitive data inside the organization. Okay, so that's workspace templates. We also need to set a scope of how widely we're searching data. So these are called data source templates. So the data source template, so for example, is either, so the example is all corporate records. So in this example, I've just said search for everything which is inside Content Manager. So I've said don't search Exchange, don't search the file system, don't search anything on SharePoint. I can also set some options about the date range that I have inside this data source, and perhaps some further options, so which classifications and which record types to filter this search by. So this sets the scope of how wide you want to search for data. So classic, if you're doing a data subject access request, you perhaps want to search across all repositories. If you're doing more of a cleanup activity, maybe you just want to search through individual type of repository or look for perhaps just the records. Okay, so that's the configuration. So here's some instances of that. So instance of the template. First of all, let's have a look at a data subject access request. In a data subject access request, we can see this one's already been defined. we've assigned a data subject, which is important for a data subject access request, and we've set the scope in terms of the data source. So here I've set it to use all of the repositories that I have available. And I've set it to look for across all of that repositories. I want to look specifically for an individual data subject. Let's go and have a look at this data subject. On the right hand side, you can see I can click to edit the data subject. I can also create new data subjects. The most basics data subject is a first name and a last name and a primary email. Those are the kind of the mandatory items. You can also add secondary emails that we can look for. Or we can also add more fields. So we can say any of these. So either we find the name or we find the email. Or we could then say, look for more information. So, you know, we could add, look for further fields if we knew, and further grammars to be selected. So those are the options. So whatever information you have on an individual, you can put that into the data subject. Once you've assigned the data subject and the data source, it will represent the data that's been found for that data subject across the data sources in a timeline. On this option here, we can also show it by file type. So most of this is email, but we do have some PDF documents and some text documents. We can see this information has been tagged. 100% of it is tagged, which is not a total surprise with a subject access request. But majority of it's been tagged. Like we've got sort codes, we've got some address information, some IBAN numbers, and passport numbers. So, and then a number of partially sensitive information. We can also present the similar information in terms of a mapping view. You can see the larger items are where we found more information. Then we start to break this down into a process view, and this is by assigning through the concept of workbooks. If we click on the content view at the top here, we can actually see the individual documents. So this is a little bit like the research view, but we're only looking for inside the definition of the workspace. So only you will only be able to search for data inside the workspace. So this can protect the people doing the analysis, so they're not searching widely across the data. They can only see what's been defined inside the workspace. So we get similar types of filters down the left-hand side here to look at particular data. We've got the list view and the content view. We've also got the details view, which can be brought out with this tag here. And here we can see all the data that's been found. So, for example, and this is useful for checking false positives. I can click on the passport number and see, yeah, this is definitely a passport number. And this is where I start to make some decisions on what to do with this data. So here I found out that this definitely contains sensitive data. We definitely need to do something with it. So we need to manage it in some form. So our options are on the manage. We can apply all of these things to workbook or just selected items to workbook. We can put them on hold. So this takes a copy into the system to apply as a hold. All or selected items to be on hold. And what this does is adds them to these workbook objects. Alternatively, you can send individual documents to a workbook. So this lists all the workbooks down here, and by checking on the item, hit the plus icon, I can add them to a workbook. If I look at the workbooks, so the workbooks, these are workbooks that you can imagine as more of a process-orientated. So each one of these contains a set of criteria, but allows us to enact a particular process. These two are dynamic workbooks. So if I click on this one, for example, and show you the definition of it, this has got a criteria similar to a tag, but so if I edit the criteria, you can see the same definitions of what we have in a tag. And what we're saying here is if the tag credit card details has been applied to this document, put the item into this workbook. So this happens dynamically without any user interaction. Obviously, there's no credit card details because there's no items in this one. This one contains a passport number. So you can see this definitely contains, here's the passport number we found before. And so this document containing personal data is automatically applied into that workbook. These two are the more manual assigned. So these ones with the blue icons are the ones that are manually assigned. So here I've added two items that are directly identifiable data. I've checked them. I've added them to the workbook. And these are we click on this to execute the actions. On the right hand side here, I get the details pane to tell me the actions that have already been executed. So I can see that we've collected them so that we can actually have a look at the actual document in detail. With enrichment, so we can do the highlighting. And this one contains, it's unique within inside the content. Here we can say the activities that we hold, and this is where we take action on the data. Before we take action on the data, it's a good point just to check the weighted privacy score. Just gives you an idea of across all the items that I have here, this is the weighted score across all the items, and here are the tags that have been defined within inside these documents. It's useful in terms of reporting as well. The activities, so each one of these, like we discussed, this one's got to be removed, so here we should delete these items from the workbooks. But notice we need to select a reviewer. So I'm going to select Greg Clark to be the reviewer. And once I submit this for approval, then Greg Clark will need to actually review this document and approve the action before this is executed. Once all of the actions are taken, and you can see the action statuses on the general tab, so if we can view the contents, we can edit these, we can export them, we can delete them. We can see back in the overview page, the actions that have already been executed. All of the actions are audited, so we click on the audit button. It shows me each of the actions that have been taken. So who's done them, what the action was, and when it was. We also produce a report. So this is really important for subject access requests. Click on the report, it produces a PDF report. You can see this at the bottom here. Let's open this. So this gives a report on when the report was created, the source, the data sources that we searched, the data subject that we were looking for, and the actions that were taken. And a few metrics about all the actions that were taken across all of the workbooks. Okay, so this takes us to the end of the manage section. Thank you very much for listening.